What? The real Top Gun Maverick? You mean there's a true story here? Yes, but wait, there's more. Not only was this guy the best air-to-air combat pilot, but he was also real good at maths and war strategy. In fact, he helped the Air Force to better evaluate their aircraft and worked with the Marines to implement better military strategy. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, to tell this story properly, we need to set some context. In today's all-too-common anti-American backlash, it has become common to shame America or poke satirical fun at its corrupt political leaders. And even when Hollywood or the legacy media gives us a hero, they are often no more than a one-note, rogue, machismo, go-it-alone to save us all alpha male super Chad. Actors like Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer built their careers portraying such heroes in the classic 80s film Top Gun. Every conservative, pro-military dude in America has had the satisfaction of living out our toy F-16 heroes of flight fantasies through these heroic examples. And of course, there are the parts of the film that appeal to women too. Put me on the team, Tom. I can play volleyball. But what this film and other films like it fail to portray are the real heroes from real history that inspired such stories. And it is sometimes the case that the real story is even greater than the fantasy portrayed in the film. Top Gun came out in the 80s, a time when Reagan was conservative king. So it was no surprise that it did well. But the follow-up, Top Gun Maverick, came out in 2022, at a time when the legacy media is constantly shaming America. The film grossed $1.5 billion. That's right, folks. Billion with a B, more than any other movie in 2022. So clearly, conservative America is hungry for pro-American heroes. So how many pro-America movies have we seen since then? You know, it's kinda nice. I would even say it is good to be reminded that there are honorable men serving with integrity in the state. Today I want to tell you about a real-life maverick, John Boyd. This is a hero you might not often hear about. While he may indeed very well be the classic American trope of macho, alpha male, independent, I go my own way ace pilot, he is so much more than that. He was not only a real-life maverick, but he also went on to become a modern-day Sun Tzu. This video is based on the book titled Boyd, the Fighter Pilot Who Changed the Art of War by Robert Coram. It's very good. I highly recommend it. But you know me, I do like to read, so I read much more than just one book. In fact, last year, I read 70 books, which I elaborated on in last week's video. And of all the books I read last year, this was one of my favorites. Well, definitely top 3. In fact, I didn't just read this book for this video, but I read 2. After reading Coram's book, I also read Certain to Win, The Strategy of John Boyd Applied to Business. This one, not quite as good. I probably would not recommend it. And not only that, but I also watched Boyd's 5-hour presentation on patterns of conflict. The audio is terrible and you can't see the slides. And I read a couple articles including Genghis John by Franklin C. Spinney and 40 Years of the Fighter Mafia, an informal group begun by Colonel John Boyd and the mathematician Tom Christie calls on the Pentagon to do more with less. From The American Conservative by Kelly Buchar Flahos. Wow, that's a mouthful. John Boyd was tall and lanky, unlike our film's protagonist. But just like your typical stereotype of a Top Gun-style aviator, John was a loud-talking, long, thin, stogie cigar-smoking, wild gesticulating fighter jock. He talked big, and when he spoke, he spit. It often seemed like he was shouting, and every Wednesday night you could see him at the officers' club with a circle of young acolytes circled around as he told wild tales. He was an irrepressible, all-in-your-face alpha male who flew the F-86 in about 20 combat missions at the tail end of the Korean War and became one of the first flight instructors at the Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Being a flight instructor at the Fighter Weapons School pretty much made you a demigod in the Air Force, just as they portrayed Maverick in the film Top Gun.
I thought of being an instructor, sir. God help us.
Now, Nellis Weapons School might not sound as cool as Top Gun, which is indeed a real school, but Top Gun trained the best Navy pilots. Nellis was the even better Air Force flight school. Here, the training was dangerous. At this school, they pushed the envelope, and pilots even died. Boyd put out a standing bet that none of his students, other instructors, or any pilot in the Air Force could survive air-to-air combat with him for more than 40 seconds. He would even let them start on his tail. But within 40 seconds, he would have guns on them, or else he would pay them $40. This is how he came to be known as 40-Second Boyd. One of Boyd's lifelong friends, Ron Catton, a retired fighter pilot and one of the few ever to graduate from the fighter weapons school with a perfect score, said that Boyd usually only needed 20 seconds to win, but liked a little insurance in case something went wrong. In one such case, he would jolt from maneuver to maneuver, pushing his best students into harder and harder turns. He would push the student just hard enough that the student thought he had him. Just 10 seconds left, the student thought. I think I can get guns on him. I'm gonna be the first to beat Boyd. And then, right at the last second, Boyd would do what he called one of his fast transients, like the flat scissors or the pitch back maneuver. These were moves that dumped energy, like slamming on the brakes while simultaneously doing a dangerous dive that could put the plane in a dead spin. The flat scissors was used when both planes were turning slowly, trying to outturn each other. Boyd would roll and reverse direction repeatedly, forcing the opponent to overshoot. In a pitchback, Boyd would maneuver vertically to regain position. Instead of a flat turn, the pilot pulls into a vertical climb before rolling over to re-engage. This forces the opponent into a low energy state, while allowing the attacker to re-enter with superior energy. But rather than relying on any one single maneuver, Boyd emphasized quick shifts in speed, direction, and altitude to confuse his opponents. Boyd never lost. By the late 1950s, he was widely regarded as the finest fighter pilot in the Air Force. It rankled all the other pilots that no one could defeat him. He even extended the challenge to every pilot in the Navy or Army. We know that no one ever defeated him because if anyone had, they would have bragged about it to the high heavens. This guy was the real Maverick, and in more ways than one. In fact, he only started out as 40-Second Boyd. He went on to serve in the administration where they even began calling him the Mad Major. But as you can imagine, a tall, cocky, outspoken combat pilot was not fated to do well among the blue suit careerists. Just listen to this description of how he spoke to his superiors. Boyd cornered a general in the hallway and began an intense conversation about lowering the weight of the newest fighter jet project. Boyd was smoking a cigar and waving his arms and jabbing his finger. The general grew bored and turned and began edging away just as Boyd reached out to emphasize a point. The cigar burned a hole in the general's tie. For a moment, those passing by froze as they stared at the unforgettable image of an astonished general looking down at the hole in his tie. The hole smoldered on the edges and grew larger, and smoke rose around the general's face. He slapped out the burning tie, then spun and walked away. Boyd did not know the reason for the general's abrupt departure until someone said, "Damn, John, you just set the general's tie on fire." Boyd looked down the hall after the general. "Yeah," he chortled. "Bet that's the first time that ever happened to him."
You got some balls, stick jockey. I'll give you that.
At the Pentagon, he completely revolutionized the way the Air Force and the Navy evaluates fighter jets. He also changed the way they train pilots in air-to-air combat. But the top brass at the Air Force hated him. He literally wrote their textbook on air-to-air combat, but you won't find his name on that book. He served 2 decades as an officer on active duty and served 6 years at the Pentagon, but was only promoted to full colonel. He was never promoted to general. That's practically shameful for an officer who served as long as he did and contributed so much. This is yet another feature he shared with the character of Top Gun. Yet today hardly anyone talks about John Boyd, except for us military history nerds. While his legacy remains, he really did not receive many accolades during his lifetime, and he is unfortunately the archetype of the unsung hero. Late in his career, he went on to change the way the Marines think about war strategy. He is in fact the only blue suit or Air Force officer featured in the Marines Hall of Fame. Eventually we'll get to that part as well. Because you see folks, this is only the first part of a 4-part series in which we will learn how to apply his strategic insights in a competitive arena. It's the first of many video essays I plan to produce on winning competitive strategies and rewriting the rules with game theory. In the next part of the series, we will see how John Boyd and his acolytes outmaneuvered his superiors and managed to navigate Pentagon politics. So be sure to ring the notification bell so that you too can become a real-life Maverick and revolutionize your domain of expertise. Special shout out to Finn, a member of my Discord community. He is the most obsessed Top Gun fan by 2 orders of magnitude that I have ever met. And he consistently posts art on hashtag Top Gun Tuesday. If you think you might be interested in joining the Discord channel, be sure to check us out at www.bestclassever.org.